over there.
Good afternoon, this is Jeff with Sewer Tech Northwest. We're at 20163 Southwest Monson Street here in Beaverton, located at the front of the house. I describe everything as if you're standing, basically either in the driveway or out at the main road facing into the property or the front of the house. This line does appear to go out all the way to the main road, so we're going to kind of have to orient based off both those spots. So just to the left of the door, we have a 3-inch ABS cleanout. I'm going to check the overall condition and serviceability of the sanitary sewer line. Water is running. We're going to zero out. And because of the length of this line, I'm going to just be ripping the camera along here as fast as we can to get all the way out. I will do most of the looking at things on the way back in. I'm going to try and keep momentum up here. And what I always like to preface people with on these flag lot sewer lines, and we just swapped the PVC and now the 3034 PVC pipe, 4-inch diameter. I have done almost 25,000 scopes over my 13 years doing this. I'm probably a solid, easily 1,000 of them have been flag lots. They are very prone to standing water. It's the nature of the beast when you have a line that is triple, quadruple the length of the average sewer line. I tend to be, I don't nitpick these as hard. The main laterals out on these main roads were typically never designed to conveniently accommodate a line this length. Not that they aren't theoretically deep enough to accommodate them. In a perfect world, your mains are 20 feet deep and you have a line this long. It provides a lot more room to grade the sewer line. Anyway, because of that, if you don't get your install, your compaction perfect over a huge swath of ground, it's very, very common to have some level of standing water. So I tend to focus in on the really major issues on these ones, hard obstructions. Standing water is one of those that, unless it's really severe and close proximity to the house, I generally don't recommend fixing it unless you have bad pipe joints that are open to the ground, things of that nature. Otherwise, I would rather see people do maintenance cleaning on these if it's necessary. So we've hit the main here at about 149 feet. We're going to go locate the camera head while the pipe drains off, and then we'll take a second look at everything as we come back. All right, located the camera head successfully. Line terminates out on Southwest Monson. You've got kind of a decent little landmark. If you go walk over to where the this driveway meets with the neighbor's driveway and they turn into one main flag lot drive, you can see the patch in the concrete there where they did a spot repair. From that point forward, the line basically runs dead straight from that patch on out to the street. So it kind of orients to the left side of the flag lot drive part of things.
Will you hold down that side?
Now we've got a little bit of water trickling to the line. Some of that's likely the standing water behind the camera. As I move the camera through it, it's going to slosh little bits loose. So we'll revisit that here in just a minute. Once we get back into some of that standing water. So on lines like this, like I was saying before, I focus on standing water, at least as far as repairs are concerned, only when it's very close proximity to the home. Once you start to get a distance away from this, from the home, the kind of stuff we're working with right now, like this is rinky-dink. It's like a 1/16 of an inch of water there. I fully expect to see at least something like that on a line this length. Whether it is brand spanking new, never lived into 100 years old. And I kind of just write these ones up in generalities. So far we've got between a 1/16 and a 1/4 inch sporadically throughout the line. A little bit of grease and debris build up there. I may recommend a Hydrojet just to clean the line up. And my 2 cents on these, on lines like this where you're rarely ever going to get a perfect sewer line, I think it's a nice compromise just for the homeowners to always jet these things during a sale, bring the line back down to base. But the kind of grease and debris buildup you've gotten here so far is very minor. You've only got it in a couple spots. And what we just went through a moment ago there, my camera busted up a lot of that stuff. A lot of that's going to slough loose on its own naturally. If we had that same level of buildup throughout the entire sewer line, I would for sure recommend a Hydrojet on the line. What we've got here thus far is pretty minor stuff. It's like another wipe up on the sidewall. And on that note, these lines like this, you know, you don't have special toilets for lines this length. They're the same thing every other house has. It takes a lot longer for debris to get from A to B. And so you want to make sure what's going down these things is proper stuff, not improper items. Because it just takes that much longer for stuff to make its way out, and it's more likely to get hung up. So we have a joint here that is fairly separated. I don't know how much more attachment that thing's actually got at this point. The joint appears to be sealed as it sits right now. I don't see a lot of strong evidence of dirt intruding through. There is a little bit of staining on the joint edge there, but anytime you get a little bit of an edge on stuff, it's also going to catch any debris coming down the line. This is what I'm going to recommend to fix on. It's separated enough. My concern is it going to ever detach? Right now, it doesn't appear to be doing anything. I don't see any settling taking place here due to hydro erosion, which is the main concern right out of the gate, is if that joint's sucking dirt through it, it can cause the line to progressively settle. None of that is present here as it sits right now. This is one that it's pulled apart far enough. Part of this recommendation is liability related. It would be one thing if it was only a 1/4 inch separation. You've got probably dang near 2 inches or more of separation there. All right, so I've marked this with a red X. I'm not sure if that paint's actually going to last. Sorry. As it is raining quite hard today. I've marked it with a red X. We're about 4 foot 6 inches deep here.
You gotta hold it.
You're good, dude. It's okay. It's not raining right now. And this is actually one of the bummers. You've got a secondary clean out right here. It's been clearly asphalted over, unfortunately. If that's a two-way, it's hard to tell right now, especially with the light glare I've got. If that were to be a two-way access point, you could theoretically expose that. It's only sitting maybe a foot away. Let's see, this is 54 feet. So yeah, basically a foot further towards the street, and you've got a clean out access. If that's a two-way access point, you could potentially, you'd have to expose that. It would require some level of asphalt cutting there, but you would probably be able to prevent yourself from having to do a true trench-style repair. You could potentially shoot an epoxy liner through that. So a little bit of standing water here. We're starting to get back into the area, I think, where there was a spot repair done. As you can see, the standing water did not get fully corrected, and I'm not surprised by that. Like I was saying before, these are, because of how tight your tolerances are, to fix a, let's say a 10-foot belly, your tolerances are this tight, you'd have to take your repair back to this point right here where you have this hard drop to earn some grade back to actually fully correct really any of that standing water completely. So anyway, that's a spot there. If it's not repaired, I would rescope the line periodically to keep an eye on it. I would also consult a repair company that does trenchless epoxy liners. Typically speaking, they like to go through a 4-inch access point. That allows you to line both 4 and 6-inch diameter pipe. Being that this looks like it's 3 and 4-inch, you may very well be able to run a 4-inch liner through a 3-inch cleanout. That just gives you a little peace of mind. If you don't do a repair now, if you ever had to, you may be able to do it without digging. And be able to go through this initial cleanout. I wanted to take a look at something really quick here. There was a tie-in. I think it might be a test Y or test T connection though. And you've got a T in right here. This is a real bummer. This is right where the line was repaired. And this got covered up too. This one may very well be a test T connection. I think it's unlikely you've got a party line. That's pretty uncommon for this era of house. It's just a bummer that both those tie-ins there are covered over. Even if it was a test T, it would allow you to use it as an access point to do a liner. And if you can do it trenchlessly or almost trenchlessly by liner, that's what I would shoot for first. It should save some money. You reduce the risk you're gonna cause further settling. Anytime you go spot repair, and especially lines like this that are very tight tolerances to work with, your likelihood of ending up with some kind of settling issue or an offset joint after the fact is quite high, unfortunately. That's why you're better off doing large swaths of ground when you fix these things. Helps to ensure you get everything done right. So anyway, as it sits here right now, as far as flow goes, we have good flow to the main lateral. The buildup in the line is very minimal. There's not enough in there that I could really justify doing a hydrojet. You've got a couple spots with some debris, but they're very sporadic and short-lived, and none of it's really occupying the flow line in a meaningful way. So I do recommend a spot repair there at 54 feet to correct that separated joint. Again, right now, I am not seeing super strong, obvious signs it's open to the ground. It may be. It's a hard one. Sometimes you get a joint that's partially open in some locations. Sometimes it can be in an area where water runs into things and can kind of wash your evidence away. But I'm not seeing obvious stuff. We don't have obvious water dripping through the pipe joint, dirt clods sticking out, earthworms crawling around, things of that nature. So from what I can tell, there's also no settling that's taken place either. That's one of the main things I look for, is if there's progressive settling taking place because the joint is separated and opened up to the ground. So right now, I don't see much going on there. I'm just concerned. It would be one thing if there was a ½ inch of separation there. Right now, it looks like you've got probably 2 inches. There's only so much of that fern coat that you've got left there before the joint can separate if things do shift. For instance, if that joint is to some extent open to the ground, it can cause potentially slowly but surely that joint to pull apart and or drop and separate and open to the ground or create an offset joint. So if it does get repaired, make sure you do a rescope to check the work. If you dig it up, make sure that happens after the line is buried. Put a load on top of it, compact it, get it ready for asphalt pouring, and then scope it. Make sure there's no settling problems, and then do your asphalt work. Otherwise, rescope the line. I would do that about every single year for the next couple, 2-3 years, to watch for any progressive signs of change there at that joint. If you don't see much in that span of time, most likely it's going to stay put. But it is one of those things too. It may very well come up on a future inspection potentially, so be aware of that as well. Otherwise, everything else we've seen here, the standing water is far too minor, in my opinion, to require any repair work. It's all minor stuff anyway. None of it is exceeding really even 1/4 of an inch. And for reference, I don't even consider repairs on especially plastic lines until you have at least 1 inch of water for 5 feet. That's with no water running at all. And generally speaking, I'm only recommending a fix on stuff like that when it's very close into the home. Everything you have here is the kind of stuff that could only contribute to a blockage under abusive scenarios. So as we sit here, line is functioning properly at this time as it is related to flow. We may have a compromised joint there at 54 feet. Could be open to the ground, but it's certainly very close to potentially separating.